all the years that I lived in Phoenix, besides the first year I landed there, I would say that I was really spoiled. I had always lived well, and my love of this community really had to keep me here, and it does. That is what keeps people here, that they're in a position that they have to work 2 and 3 part-time jobs, to make ends meet. I did realize when I arrived, at that time especially, that property management was not an option as I was used to it. We had a lot of smaller properties, but nothing on the big scale, the large scale that actually paid something, like what I was used to. And honestly, I was a little burnt out on it, so I thought, okay, this is time to make a change, and it's time to go back to school. So I did. I went back to school for graphic design, and I've always been a creative, personality, and so loved that. And, as I was going to school, I started bringing real-life projects, into the classroom, which my instructors did not always appreciate. They wanted me to stick to the assignment, and I wanted to do real-life work. But, what it helped me do is to build a portfolio, in my volunteer work, and it led to, other things, so right away I got out there in the real world and, started working. I have worked as a lab assistant in the jewelry lab and the lapidary lab at Yavapai College. Let me see, where else have I worked at Yavapai College? For the newspaper, for the Rough Rider. I have, once I was out of school, I worked for the Natalie Kroll Gallery. I worked for the Fitton Museum as the gift shop manager. I worked for Jim Lamerson for almost a year. And, I worked at Access 13, for almost a year, and that was incredibly interesting. I love that job. And that's one of the things that really got me interested, more and more interested in council affairs. Is I was kind of considered the council nerd there, because I was constantly turning the TV up to hear, listen to council meetings, and everyone else was turning it down. And so, I just became, more and more engrossed, in the whole process. And, my volunteer activities, also, entertained my interest. And as I, through my volunteer efforts, I became more familiar with the local politics, the city employees, etc. And the more I learned, the more questions I had, and the more interested I became.
So now you worked at the Tiz Gallery too, didn't you? When they first opened, is that right?
When they very first opened.
So, okay. Tell me about your nonprofit organizations that you've been on.
Prescott Fine Arts is now, in fact, it's just renamed. I should throw in a perk for them, and I'm trying to remember what. Prescott Center for the Arts is what it is now.
Okay.
Yeah, that will be by next season, which starts in September. And I started off there helping with refreshments and greeting people and sitting in the gallery and that sort of thing. And then that evolved into curating many art shows and becoming chair of the Visual Arts Committee, and a lot of work, a whole lot of work. And then, I served on the board of directors at Prescott Fine Arts, and I also was involved with the Fourth Friday Art Walk group, for some time. I have served on several 2050 committees, which was very interesting. And I, of course, was heavily, involved in the Prescott Area Arts and Humanities Council, very heavily involved.
I did want to ask you about some of the 2050 committees, because recently you also spoke before the Republican Mint, and one of the things you recommended there is that they sell the Elks building. And yet, in the 2050 committee, you were on the arts, weren't you? Weren't you on the arts committee?
I was on arts, and there were two committees that were similar, and one was arts and one was culture.
Yeah, and that group recommended that the city buy up historic buildings around the Elks Theater and provide them to artists, you know, for low or reduced rents and a variety of things like that. And you're also saying that you're fiscally conservative, so I'm trying to figure out how all that merges.
Through watching how things have, those things are always good in theory. They always are, and I do think it is good for the city to, provide support, in those areas. What has become obvious, with the Elks is that the city is not equipped to manage and run a theater. That's not their business. It's not what they're in the business to do. And, that's something that has just come across, loud and clear. I think everyone is pretty much in agreement that, it just isn't working. And so, I do believe the city needs to sell the Elks. I absolutely, and get out of that mix and, turn it over to professionals that really know what to do with theater. It's wonderful that the city helped, kickstart the whole thing and get it going and helped prevent the whole thing from failing back in the day, when it was rat infested and, falling apart and, that sort of thing. But it's absolutely time to let go of it and, allow those that know what to do with the theater to come in and take over.
Do you have any ideas about what kind of group that would be? I mean, there's the Elks Foundation.
Right. And I do understand that there was some sort of negotiation for, and understand I'm not involved with Prescott Fine Arts anymore. I serve a little bit on their marketing committee. But, so this isn't, I'm not, being Prescott Fine Arts self-serving. But I do understand that there were negotiations, on the table for Prescott Fine Arts to perhaps, come in and manage the Elks, and I'm not sure exactly why that didn't go through. I, do know that the foundation, at least that's what I've heard, that the foundation was very much in support of that. But somehow it didn't come together, and I do feel that that's unfortunate that they weren't able to find a way, to make that come together because, obviously there's a proven record there of knowing what, to do in that venue, So, but, it does come back to it would be better for the city to look to actually selling the Elks. Then it takes the city out of the mix, and free enterprise will, even if it's a nonprofit that takes over, free enterprise will will dictate its success, and I do believe it will be successful.
When you say that the city should be out of the mix, do you have anything specific about specific concerns that regarding the Elks that make you come to that conclusion?
I don't know about anything specific, but overall, it doesn't seem that the city is prepared, or has the proper people available, to run a theater, and it should, that's not the, and that's not, I don't mean that as a negative, it's just, should the city have the people in place? Why should they? Especially if it's, if it's not making, money. Okay. I believe that private interest can do a lot better job, with it.
So you think that the Elks Theater could be making money?
Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's just too valuable. It's, it's a beautiful, amazing, incredible theater. I was there for the fundraiser, last Friday, and it wasn't hugely attended, but it was a wonderful event, and I had the opportunity to sit there and just quietly look around, you know, and it's an amazing building. You know, it's not something that we want to go to waste.
Right.
You know, it's a huge investment, you know, and the city has made, you know, a good investment that will eventually come back around. But in order for that to happen, I believe the city needs to let go.
So do you still think that the city should be buying up other historic buildings downtown, or you think that was...
In this economy, definitely not.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely not.
Well, see,
not in this economy.
Sometimes the problem is in good economies you do these things,
right?
And then you end up in bad economies, and you're going, oh, what did I do that for?
Yeah. So I'm not saying that what the city has done in the past was not a good thing. You know, the building was saved. You know, and that's you know, I believe time will tell that was a very positive effort. You know, but it's time to change the path.